Canto 6 is the most depressing story Project Moon has ever made. So far, Dawn's Canto is probably going to take the only happy character in the city and put her through a living hell, but we'll get to that trauma when we get to it. For now, we are focusing on Canto 6, which for all intents and purposes is somehow more tragic and depressing than the original Wuthering Heights book. Which was a surprise because for the prior cantos, we saw the sinners go through the worst moments in their lives, with Yi-song wishing he had died and hating that he can be revived, and Ishmael becoming so obsessed with Ahab to where she lost all control of her life, and was barely able to recognize who she even was. But at the end, Yi-song started to love life, believe in himself, and now he can grow as a person, instead of viewing his technology as reason to think he's failed in life. Then Ishmael resolved to never let another person control her life. She decided that she will never be led astray or controlled by another ever again. The endings were really happy, which is why despite how bad everything got in Canto 6, I thought Heathcliff would come out of it all happy. And that was far, far from the case.
너와 다른 사람들에겐 이제 기억의 얼룩이 되어버렸다는 거. 하지만 내겐 너무 선명해졌어. 절대 지울 수 없어.
It's not an exaggeration to say that this canto took Heathcliff, everything that made him up, and absolutely shattered him in what he has lived his entire life for. But to really explain why that's the case and how this canto was able to take Wuthering Heights and use its story to only leave Heathcliff more empty by the end of it, we need to talk about what he was like when he joined the company and why he did it. So the very first thing we see from Heathcliff is him already rushing to get into a fight with the people who jumped Dante at the beginning. Hell, the first introduction line for him is that he prefers to take action rather than having logic dictate his choices. Which, yeah, that sounds like a Project Moon player. And from there, we see him get into beef with basically anything. Enemies we encounter, someone who said something mildly offensive to him, Sinclair's skull looking a bit too weird, causing him to reshape it. At first, he was a brute, swung first, swung hard, and swung fast to where he didn't have to confront whatever it was that he was facing. His past in a Syndicate didn't help much to reduce that option either. But as time progressed, as we got through more and more cantos, he took a different approach. He started to care more about the people around him, as opposed to just lashing out whenever he got mad. In Canto 4, after Ron's explosion, he told Dante to help Dawn, not even caring about the fact that he was also in immense pain. In Canto 5, he was the one who helped Ishmael when she was losing sight of herself, mirroring the immense care Keequike had for her. And when Dante got stabbed by Ishmael, he asked them if they were alright. Dante reassured that their clock was fine, but Heathcliff didn't care at all. He wanted to know if Dante was fine, not their ability to revive the sinners. In terms of development, all these sinners have been growing bit by bit, even before their canto, as we can see with Dawn actually pausing to think for once. But above all, Heathcliff changed from someone who was akin to a rabid dog biting the hand of anyone, into someone who deeply cared for his allies. Little by little, we've seen him grow, which culminates in the Heathcliff we have at the start of Canto 6. A changed person who is much more collected. And shortly into the canto, he says why he went through all of this growth. For Catherine. The love of his life. He wanted to change, grow, and return as a better man, all for her. Because of that, he walks into the manor, and after getting insults hurled at him over and over by Linton and Hindley, the people who abused him as a child, he doesn't lash out. He says that he's found a place to belong and, if anything, just pities Hindley because he never really changed. If it was in the past, he would have just clocked the two of them before one word came out of their mouth. Hell, he even said how he envisioned returning and just destroying the place. But we ended up seeing a shade of the old Heathcliff when Linton taunted him, saying how his marriage with Kathy was perfect. And when it was revealed to him that Kathy died, he started to go berserk, snapped, and wanted to fight the Wi-Fi, a really dangerous fix organization, until Nellie subdued him. After waking up, he listened to the will, and after hearing that she will give him the bow, he broke down, saying how that doesn't matter to him at all. The only thing that he wants is to see Kathy. After the scenery changes, Nellie is able to make him more calm by saying that it's likely for Kathy to be alive, which is why later he decided to spare Hindley instead of killing him, because it's what Kathy would have wanted him to do. By now it's pretty apparent, but everything Heathcliff's done has been for Kathy. His change to become more calm for how Kathy will view him. Him looking better to impress Kathy. Keeping one of his abusers alive even as they are hurling insults at him because Kathy wouldn't have wanted to see him die. Everything Heathcliff went through, from his development to joining the company, has all been for Catherine. Which is why when they progress more into the manor and end up seeing Kathy's coffin, Heathcliff reverts to how he was when we first met him. The person who prefers to take action before having logic dictate his choices. Nothing he does matters as long as he is able to protect Catherine. He goes to take Kathy out of the coffin, even if it means killing everyone else in the pods. He says that he's a heartless bastard and no one could change his mind. The person we came to know completely regressed to his old ways. And the breaking point was when Matt revealed himself to be Heathcliff from another world, who has the goal of killing Kathy's murderer, who was none other than Heathcliff. He was the reason for Kathy's death, with him being a witless brigand, a vagrant, something wrapped in a filthy, stinking rag of a sack. That's what he was, is, and will always be. All he should do in his life is kill the ones who humiliated him, and above all, kill the person who took Catherine's life, which is him. Due to his nature, he is her murderer. As a person, as Heathcliff, he is the savage beast who would bring nothing but despair to Wuthering Heights, the place he grew up in, the home of his torturers that berated him day by day, only staying in the manor, enduring the beatings, humiliations, and whippings, causing so many scars to mark his body well into adulthood. He stayed in that hell just for Catherine, leaving not because of the abuse, but because he thought Kathy did not love him. After everything he went through, that was his breaking point. He made one last decision to leave instead of tearing down the manor and killing everyone in it. He says that he will grow as a man and return to the manor, making Kathy regret leaving him. He'll better himself for her to view him differently. Then, upon reminiscing about these memories, Carmen asks him,
하지만 지금은?
Memories start flashing by about what he went through upon returning to the manor. He spent his entire life after leaving to better himself for Catherine, then returns to news that she's dead, married Linton before passing away, and that he was the cause of her death. He is the one who killed the person he loved so much. He is why she was miserable. In every reality, all infinite possibilities, Heathcliff condemns her to death. He sees fragments of other worlds, other Heathcliffs who were the cause of Kathy's death, and went through despair as a result of it. And when Carmen asks what those Heathcliffs look like, he says what everyone told him as a child.
넌 저 모습을 보면 어떤 생각이 들어?
이게 사람이 할 행동인가? 답이 없는 넝마저로를 뒤집어 쓴 망나니 새끼로 그저 사람 모양 가죽만 뒤집어 쓴 속은 쓰레기로 가득한 넝마처럼 내가 바뀌었다고? 바뀐 모습을 보여줄 거라고?
그리고 시건방지게 이전과는 다른 사람이 되었다고 착각하지 마라, 히스클리프.
어림도 없었어. 애초에 성립이 안 되잖아. 나는 사람조차 되지 못했는데.
히스클리프, 너는 너를 어떻게 생각해?
He cannot handle the reality of what he's gone through. He degrades himself with his words, aided by Carmen. He continues this until
집으로 온 걸 환영해, 히스클리프.
nothing is left but a wild animal. Because to him, that is a better existence than to be the person who ruined Catherine and could not become worthy of her. By then, he is just a beast that lashes out at anyone, filled with wrath and only focused on killing. He didn't regress to how he was when we first met him. He is far below that. It's only because Dante and the sinners tried to save him that he returned to being a human, and said that he thought going wild and destroying everything would make him feel better, though it didn't. He just felt even worse. But he wanted to remain that way forever because it was better than doing nothing. All that is left in him is self-hate. And this is where the chapter speaks to something I'm sure a couple of people can relate to. Canto 4 is where we saw the story of someone viewing their life as a failure, obsessed with who they could have been. Canto 5, we saw someone unable to hold the reins of their own life, only pushing forward through the hate and obsession, doing and becoming what someone else wants them to be, as opposed to their own choices. Then in Canto 6, we saw someone build themselves up for another, become a better person for their sake, and we see what they get reduced to when they look back at their development as a person and think they haven't changed, they haven't improved. It's like having a huge fallout with a friend, growing to hate each other, saying terrible things back and forth. After that bridge is burned, most people are left with regretting what they did. From there, they strive to become better, to make sure they will never lash out the same again. But if they're put in another situation where that same outcome happens, if they fall out with another friend and blame themselves, most people turn to self-hate, regret, hating how they haven't developed as a person, wondering if they themselves are not as good as they would like to be. Thinking back to any ruined relationship as, I was such a terrible person, which is why this fell through. I'm sorry that they had to put up with me. This doesn't even apply to just relationships either. Wanting to change how easily mad you get, wanting to strive and improve your skills at something, wanting to be less awkward when talking to new people. Whenever someone tries to improve themselves in any way and they look back at their progress to find little to no improvement, you feel fucking terrible. When you think, it's a new year and yet I'm still as bad as I was in the last year, I haven't changed, you end up hating yourself, constantly saying the worst things to yourself, whatever will hurt the most. And believe me, out of anyone, you will know above all what is going to be the worst thing to hear, which will be the only thing echoing in your head when you hate yourself that much. It's what regret does to somebody. I know I've gone through a ton of it, and we see it on full display from Heathcliff. Someone who said they came back a better man to only have almost everyone from his past say he's the same brute. The same person who was a street rat brought into a home he didn't deserve to be in. Given clothes, shelter, and food despite being less than human. Someone who would just lash out and attack at any chance he got. That is what everyone reduced him to, and is what he reduced himself to before distorting. Thankfully, Dante and the Sinners were able to bring him back, but after seeing the damage he caused, he wondered if he was no better than even Hindley. Though Dante reassures him that he is better than what Hindley made him out to be. Afterwards, the Earl King is brought back, and they chase him to stop him from getting to the roof. Trying so hard and going so far for Dante to use an entirely new power to slow down time, making the most of the moment Virgilius gave them. After seeing that, Heathcliff is shocked. He says that his life has been filled with nothing but people who hate and scorn him. So why is Dante willing to do so much for him? He says that he isn't worth it. Before Dante can say what's on their clock, the Earl King shows up, telling Heathcliff that nothing he does matters. Catherine is already gone. He might as well roll over and die because all that awaits him in every waking moment will be him suffering and wanting Kathy by his side, endlessly searching for her until ultimately taking his own life and lying beside her in his coffin. That is the only way he will know peace in his life. But Heathcliff doesn't care for what his future will be like according to the Earl King, so they fight and subdue him, and shortly after that, Nellie frees him. The reason for the betrayal was because the mirror technology showed that in every reality she was ruined by Heathcliff and Kathy. Because of them, in every single universe she saw herself ruined. I saw some people saying that she betrayed them out of nowhere, but if you were given a glimpse into every reality that exists in the universe, and in every single one of them you see your life ruined by those two, almost as if the universe itself is telling you that your fate is to be ruined by them, and nothing you do can stop that from happening. Most people wouldn't even get out of bed the next day. Keep in mind, she couldn't leave either. As a butler, it was stay working or get hunted down by taboo hunters. What she did wasn't morally right, but I can understand why she did it. The real villain is the one who gave her the mirror. They got exactly what they wanted. They led Nellie down a path of desperation to hopefully live a better life than the one she saw in every reality that exists. And that desperation led the Earl King to the roof. With everything Heathcliff had to go through after having just got some determination from seeing Dante and Virgilius do their best to help him, he loses himself, visualizing all the problems that have painted over the gleaming violet that represents him, representing all the abuse, torment, and regret he's gone through in his life. Everything that's changed who he originally was, until he became unrecognizable. Someone who is now unseen and unnecessary, something that is worthless. The color of what everyone called him, something from the back streets. Then, due to the lightning, a memory flashes in Heathcliff's mind. The memory of Catherine saying that she'll marry Linton. He listens to it and hears the part he left before hearing in the past. That Heathcliff must never know her immense love for him. That marrying Linton is what she will do so she can better Heathcliff. And unlike what he's did in the past, like what he's done many times before, he doesn't run away from this chance. He goes to talk to Kathy. He confesses his regrets, what he's done wrong in life, and says that he will fix the things he's wrecked. At that point, he hears Dante wanting him to live a life without regret. Then another memory plays, where Kathy talks about the vibrant violet flowers that bloom in desolate moors, more lonely than anything else in the world. Yet, even as those flowers wilt and wither, it never loses its violet hue. They are the flowers she loves the most. Heathcliff thought it was foolish, but now looks back and realizes that everything Catherine has ever said was an expression of love. Because of this, he gains the strength to move forward to the roof, determined that the Earl King will not be his future, determined that, even though all realities lead down the same path, he will make a different choice. This is the reality where Heathcliff and Catherine will have a happy ending. He looks back at his life and regrets the actions he's taken, regrets how much he left unsaid, regrets his nature. But now, after seeing how many people care for him, he has the strength to change the outcome, the predetermined future. His first step is freeing Nellie from serving the manor, granting her freedom and changing her fate from what she saw an infinite number of times. And then we go to the rooftop to fight against the reality the Earl King is trying to bring. The man who was consumed by Catherine's passing, wanting to end every Heathcliff that exists, as that not only helps the guilt, but is easier to face than living without Catherine. Because of that, he has branded Heathcliff as the one who will only ruin Catherine. Therefore, they should all die for her happiness.
어떤 세계에서든 간에 캐서린과 히스클리프는 항상 비참하고 불행하게 끝난다고 했지. 하지만 아주 작은 열쇠 하나만으로도 행복해질 수 있었어. 그냥 그 문을 열고 들어가서 무서워도 부끄러웠어도 아주 조금의 용기를 내서 말을 걸면 되는 거였어.
But even if what he said was true, with Catherine gone, what does it matter? Well, fighting for that reality, fighting for Catherine's life even when no one is sure she'll wake up, it still has purpose because it shows how Heathcliff refuses to break like the Earl King did. Which is why he takes the bow and stabs himself so he's able to finally, after all these years, talk to Catherine. Memories start playing, showing how she lost all hope after Heathcliff left, and then was introduced to the mirror. After looking into it, reality after reality appeared where she was the cause of Heathcliff's downfall. Looking over and over, night after night, desperately searching for the one reality where Heathcliff was happy, only to not see one exist, and instead see a Catherine at rock bottom, one who killed Heathcliff, one who is the same as the Earl King, who comes to his same conclusion.
우리 탓이지. 캐서린이 있기에 히스클리프는 반드시 불행해져 가니까. 모든 히스클리프가 불행한 건 나의 탓. 모든 세계에 내가 없어진다면
모든 세계의 히스클리프를 죽여야 한다는 거.
모든 히스클리프는 행복해질 수 있는 거야?
그래. 그 단 하나의 사실이야말로 내 사랑의 증명이었어.
If Heathcliff were to die, if Catherine were to die, then the other would be happy. Their lives are the reason for the other's misery. She should invite the mere Catherine to kill her and every Catherine, so Heathcliff can have his heaven, not realizing the twisted irony in that wish. Until she comes out as Cathy from the other world, with the only purpose of killing all Catherines. The Heathcliff and Catherine that want nothing more than to end themselves so the other can be happy. Nearing the end of the fight, Dante gets a message on their device. It's from Cathy saying how she couldn't convey her thoughts to Heathcliff, lamenting that Heathcliff will never know the love she has for him, until he messages back, saying what he's been unable to for years, that he loves her. For once, throughout all of the realities, they were able to connect and earnestly tell each other the love they have for one another, which on its own is beautiful to see, but that line makes the tragedy 1,000,000 times worse. That's because in Wuthering Heights, the book, Catherine held no pure love for Heathcliff, only loving him for herself. She viewed Heathcliff as someone who held no purpose unless she herself had interest in him. All purpose Heathcliff holds, anything to make him out as a human being, exists purely and solely because Catherine has interest in him. Heathcliff is like a dog in her eyes. When it has an owner, it's a beloved family member. But if the owner decides to throw it out, it then becomes a mangy mutt on the side of the road, unwanted and unloved by anyone. All of his accomplishments and efforts as a human being only matter because of Catherine. In her mind, and in reality, she basically owns him. Which is why Wuthering Heights ends in tragedy. When a relationship like that, built on such a terrible basis, falls through, it's to be expected. She never looked at him like a human, so tragedy was unavoidable. Yet, in Limbus Company, she genuinely loves him. She is almost the complete opposite to how she was in the book. I say almost as the way she treated Linton is close to the book, but the fact is that in the reality Limbus Company is set in, she is madly in love with him. Out of all the realities and all of the Catherines, it feels safe to say that this is the near perfect one. Catherine doesn't view Heathcliff as an object that gains humanity by her care for him. Meanwhile, Heathcliff is almost perfect as well. He grew so much, met others who also gave him love in life, something that is beyond rare for him. He even gained the courage to speak his love out loud for Cathy. Out of every single reality with the two of them, out of all that have ended in hate, regret, and despair, this is the best reality to exist, where their two hearts were able to connect. In every reality where so much was left unsaid, where the two of them drifted away from one another, they are the closest they've ever been in any universe. Which is why what she told Dante to do hurt so much more. She said to erase all other Catherines, as that is the only way to make Heathcliff happy.
먼저 말해줘서 고마워, 히스클리프.
그러니까 그 애는 내가 자기를 얼마나 사랑하는지 알아줬나 돼.
나도 모든 세계의 히스클리프가 아닌
캐서린, 너의 모든 말들은 나를 사랑한다는 말이었네.
지금의 너를 사랑해.
Throughout all the worlds, all infinite possibilities, this is the closest we got to perfection. Heathcliff changed heavily. Catherine fully loved him more than anything in the world. For once, their hearts reunited. And yet, even in this near-perfect reality, Catherine chooses to erase every version of her from every universe, as that is the only way for Heathcliff to be happy, without her existing. It's as if the universe said that the two of them cannot and will never be together, as if the best pairing of them can only manage to erase themselves so the other may be happy. Whilst the only other ending they've had that wasn't a tragedy was the two of them resting side by side in their graves. The Earl King sees her erasure and regrets the actions they've dedicated their life to. And, just as Catherine said, without her existing, each Heathcliff moves on and meets all new people, having an entirely new life, something that we never saw from any Heathcliffs when Cathy existed. Each and every single one of them was bound to Wuthering Heights, bound to her, to only be filled with regret, guilt, and be empty upon her death, wishing for the Earl King to end their suffering. Now they are able to accomplish so much more and live a happier life without her. But our Heathcliff watched the worlds, deciding to carve each and every single Catherine into his memory, deciding that he will be the one to honor her existence. By now, at the end of the canto, Heathcliff is empty. He stayed in Wuthering Heights because of Catherine, left because of her, joined Limbus Company because of her, developed as a person because he wanted to be worthy of her. He held back his wrath against his abusers as Cathy wouldn't have wanted that. Distorted after hearing he was the cause of her death, gained the determination to journey to the rooftop and fight the Wild Hunt, all because of Cathy. He existed for her. Every action we've seen him take over the course of these 6 cantos was all for Catherine. So after she's gone, when she's erased herself from reality with close to no feasible hope of getting her back, what has he lived his entire life for? What will he continue to live for? That's where the message of this canto speaks. Canto 6 has a lot of different meanings it tells in its story, such as dealing with regret, but the main message it conveys is broken people living through life. We see that with Hindley continuing on with the purpose of upholding his status symbol at all costs. He went so far as to continue wearing disheveled, dirty rags as at least those still have color. Those still remind him of when he was rich. This desire being born from his father favoring Heathcliff over him, so he needed to hold on to anything to show his superiority to Heathcliff, with status being the one thing that he was able to laud over him. Then Linton lived his life desperately wanting Cathy to feel anything for him. Nellie worked towards getting the one reality where she was not ruined by Heathcliff and Catherine. The Earl King was filled up with wrath, with the goal of punishing himself by killing all Heathcliffs, just so existence was no longer as painful after Cathy. His purpose of living died. We even see it with Virgilius. At the end of Leviathan, he had nothing. Garnet died, the orphanage died, his group died. He's called the most dangerous color because he has next to nothing left to lose in his life. He desires to reshape the world, and the contract probably assists in that goal, which is keeping him going, until we see him break it by helping the sinners. A large part behind that action was the hatred he had for what was going on in the basement. But over time, we see him grow to like the sinners, little by little. So it's possible that he saved them because he's beginning to care about them, gaining something else to keep him going in his ruined life. Then Cathy, after being sick upon Heathcliff's departure, got her energy back and found the will to move forward with the goal of erasing herself for Heathcliff's sake. We can see every character in the canto hold on to something, anything, so they will have the strength left to live. Yet, Heathcliff is empty after this canto. For most of his life, Cathy was the only person who loved him. Then she erased herself for his sake. After he left, the dead rabbits took care of him. Then they were annihilated after Heathcliff left. He'll probably never see them again, if they're even still alive. Nellie was his caretaker and she betrayed him due to his nature and how he ruined the lives of all those around him in the other worlds. Everyone who showed him love in life has now been taken away. Anything from his past that drove him or helped him is now gone. But it might be for the better. Keep in mind, Catherine said that she wanted to erase herself for the sake of Heathcliff, and said that the only Heathcliff she loved was the one in her reality. Which is the reason why, despite having 2 golden bows, which as she said have the power to do anything, she chose to have herself be erased. She could have told Dante to free her so she could be with Heathcliff. It doesn't matter if the Earl King would have moved to the other worlds and killed all other Heathcliffs. They didn't matter to her. If she wanted that ending of the 2 of them being together, it was in reach. But she wanted herself to be erased as she doesn't want Heathcliff to exist for just her. She wants him to live a new, bright life full of infinite possibilities, even if it's without her existing in any reality. And if she were saved, that wouldn't be possible. Not in her eyes. We even see it in the past when Catherine tore through pillows to free the feathers, as she believes birds do not belong in their cages. They are beings born to soar the skies, just like Heathcliff. So even if it meant leaving him empty, she wanted that so he could live without her. His existence was bound to her and she would delete herself for him to move on, which is one of the most beautiful acts imaginable, but it's also the most cruel. It may be the growth he needs, but is he even able to handle it? That question has me worried for his future development, but what gives me hope that over time this will be good for him is what Hong Lu says at the beginning of the canto, that there's some things we could only understand when we're left with nothing. Of course the worry exists that he might solely dedicate himself to bringing her back, unable to really live his life, spitting in the face of what she wanted for him, or that being empty might make him break down and regress back into a distortion, but I don't think that'll be the case. That's because at the end we see patches of violet remain despite what happened. From the flowers that are called heath, the loneliest flowers in the world that take root and bloom in the wild moorlands. But despite any hardships they go through, any tempests that weather them, they survive. Even after wilting and withering, they keep their violet hue. They endure it all and wait. We don't know what's gonna happen with Heathcliff, but he turned into a distortion and came back from it, gained the determination to face the worst form of himself, knowing that it may be futile, that Catherine might never come back, knowing that in all other realities every single version of himself died the same, filled with regret, like the universe itself is telling him that's where his life will be headed. He knew all of that, knowledge that would make most people unable to do a thing, yet he still fought the Earl King, despite everything. Despite the tempests holding him down, he survived and pushed on, which is why Catherine made that choice for him. It's cruel, but Heathcliff won't break. He'll live his own life, meet new people, journey to places that the 2 never envisioned. It's going to be a life void of his loved one, yet it will instead hold infinite possibilities for him, a life of freedom, forced upon him by the love of his life. A person that the world may have forgotten, but he will always remember the existence of.
괜찮아